If someone's familiar with my work, they will know that one thing that is a pet peeve of mine, it irritates me a lot, is when people have incredibly reductive modes of thinking that lead them into paradigms that are just simplistic. Everything's just very, very basic so that it can easily make sense to them. And then they sillily think to themselves, it's an easy solution, it's obvious what you should do. But the point is, because they themselves couldn't take a sophisticated, nuanced, complex view of that particular thing, or apply processes and modes of thought which take on board more variables or pair together things that it might seem disparate, they're unable to actually arrive at meaningful or interesting conclusions. So classic example I often reel about is obviously single factor thinking. Like one thing, well, that guy wasn't there before and now they won, so I guess he was the reason. It's like, well, was he? Let's look at the actual conditions. Let's look what makes them win, what makes them lose, what else has changed. So another one for me is people who are incapable of thinking on multiple levels at once. They think there's one level, and once you've nailed the level and you've got like some insight or a little bit of info, that's all there is. And in fact, that precludes all other levels or interpretations. So a classic example I often give is when someone says, oh, you like that song, famous song by a songwriter. Oh, you know that song's actually about X, Y, and Z from something they've read in an interview or maybe a book, or maybe he referenced it in another song or a liner note or something. It's like, no, you're actually wrong though. That isn't about that. Now, that might be what the author, the person who wrote the song, the songwriter, intended it to be about, or what it was about to him, or what he thought of, or what spurred him on, or what created the feeling from which he is then expressing himself, describing what's happening. Maybe he's even using, you could say, a palette of experiences from his life, feelings he had, things that happened to him, things he's thought about, paradigms. You could say all that. The point is, when I listen to a song or you listen to a song, that's not what we're getting. We don't sit there like a blank slate, download his song into our mind, and then suddenly get exactly the same thing he was thinking of, the same feelings he was feeling, the same life experiences that caused him to be in the situation where he's describing and expressing himself in this particular way. Instead, what I'd say, and this is where I think people have missed it, is one, there's a level on which that's the conscious maybe sort of meaning or reason why that song was written. Then you've got aspects like, what about the unconscious? What about psychological reasons as to why the guy might have written that song or in that way, or chosen those themes to even address and think worthy of a song? Then you've got other factors like, are there bigger mythic archetypal things that he's referencing, paralleling, connecting to, that then you will have experienced in your life, or life, the human experience as a greater whole that you'll be able to relate to in a universal context, even though in his case it might be a very specific, personal, idiosyncratic context. So an example of this, because basically I don't think actually that when an artist puts art out in the world, that you just download, as I say, their meaning and sort of connect to what they're saying. What I actually think is you sort of meet them in the middle using what you brought to the table, which is why I actually think certain art can't be perceived or enjoyed until you've developed your palette, your life experience, who you are. Dostoevsky, whatever, Joyce, there's a Proust, there's a million angles on which you can go. Obviously, plenty of musical artists and film and all the rest in cinema. So what I would say is, I'll give you actually a modern day example, which is, there's a film called, I think it was called The Pride and Glory, and it came out about, I'm going to say like 7-8 years ago or something. It was a while back. It had Colin Firth, and if people remember, John Voight, who plays like a father figure. And in this film, this is how I know that an incredibly strong personal experience that I connected to with a film doesn't have to have anything to do with anyone else in the world, including whoever made this film. Because I've actually looked up, when I watched this film, it's not an amazing film. It's like an above average film. It's a good cop film with like a bit of like, sort of almost like espionage elements / corruption, and then it's about honour and family and what it means to uphold the law and all this sort of stuff. So a bit, I mean, obviously the term The Pride and the Glory is about like, representing the badge, not in the law force and all that stuff. But basically, there's a scene in it where John Voight's character basically finds out that like one of his sons has been betrayed by a figure he'd sort of been a father figure to, and was treated like a son, another one of his cops. And in this moment, he's realising that guy's actually trying to fuck over his real family members. And he has this like, because he's a veteran actor at this point in time, John Voight, he has this way of like having this facade that like is a little bit affected, and you can almost see like the twinge or like the glint in his eye of like realization of what's happened. But the way he contains almost like his righteous indignation, his fury, his rage was so incredibly powerful. This scene was just coming off the screen to me and connecting with me in a way like I felt that feeling. I know what it's like to have that burning sensation of like you trusted someone and they betrayed you, and they betrayed you in the most evil way, striking at what you love the most in the world. And what I thought was, man, everyone else must think that this must be exactly what the purpose was. And I went out there and I have searched so many times online for other people's reviews of this movie, their thoughts on this movie, their thoughts on John Voight, and I could never find anyone else who even referenced the scene, whoever had seemingly ever had the experience I had watching it. Because you know what? That wasn't in the scene. That probably wasn't even what John Voight was going for or what his performance was. But the point is, that was half of what was there. He put that part out and the scriptwriter put his part in, and then I met them halfway and whatever was inside me connected to that. And I think that is the artistic experience. Multi-levels. Obviously, my main gig is over in esports on my main channel, but my side channel and all my content around my other interests here are kindly supported by my Patreon community on Thorin's side here. So do you want to ask me a question for my video AMA? Do you want to take part in a private one-on-one exclusive, never to be released but recorded for you session? Call it consulting, call it just a conversation if you want. Do you want to find out who upcoming guests are for the Thor Inquiry episodes? If any or other perks like this take your interest, check out the Patreon link in the description box below and join Thorin's side today.